This is Goals with Soul, the podcast for visionary coaches and entrepreneurs, building your business with inspired action. In alignment with your mission and authentic message, so you can create impact for your soul clients and feel lit up every day. I'm your host, Sara Ingram, married mum of 3 daughters from London and a former ad agency director turned business coach and strategist. In Goals with Soul, we blend revenue generation with energetics, marketing strategies with pranic healing, and ambitious business goals with our soul's desires. If you're looking to build your business with less efforting and more ease, this is the podcast for you. Let's dive in. Welcome to Goals with Soul. I'm Sara Ingram, and today is an extremely special episode because my sister, Sara Ingram, is joining me in the studio, aka the bedroom where I record. And it's particularly special because my sis lives in New Zealand. I'm in London. We couldn't really be further apart. And in fact, we have not seen each other for 5 years since I went over to New Zealand to help Sara through the last part of her chemotherapy. But we'll get into that in a bit more detail soon. In fact, Sara's not been back to the UK in 9 years. So it's been an incredibly special time for our family to reunite. And we're literally making sure we record this because it's been on our hearts for a really long time. Yes, sure, we could use Zoom. We could even get over the time difference. But the specialness of sitting next to each other and having a conversation, which as you'll see unfold, is about overcoming adversity and how, despite the fact our lives have taken very different paths, there is a commonality, not just between us as sisters, but us as women. And I'm sure you're going to resonate because so many of these themes are common to all of us. Those of us building our businesses, trying to get to the next level of success in our lives in general, combining family, work, hobbies, passions, trying to do it all, particularly those of us who are already entering midlife. And I don't know about you, but certainly it's been a time for me that's thrown up a lot of questions about the next stage and how I want the next 20, 30, 40 years to unfold. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce my sis, Sara Ingram, and ask you first, hey sis, tell us a little bit about yourself, introduce us.
Hey Jo, hey everyone. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, totally agree. We've talked about doing this together since you started this podcast, and I'm actually really excited that we're here now in what I'd like to call my bedroom for the last month. So thanks for having me. Mm-hmm. A bit about me. So where do I start?
Well, tell us about what you do now. What do you identify as?
Oh, that's a tricky one because I think as women, we identify as so many things all the time. My job is a deputy headmistress, a deputy principal in a primary school, and I'm really proud of that. I only moved into teaching as an adult 10 years ago, and I think that's been a real big example of how I push myself and want to excel in whatever I do because that's something I've really excelled in. So that's what I do for a job, but I'm not sure it's how I define myself. I also have a small business that I guess I've gone on that road with you because you've been doing your small business at the same time. But in the lockdown, like many of us, I got really crafty, found hobbies I enjoyed doing like crochet and sewing. And like many people, I think, around the world during COVID, it turned into a business. Unfortunately, not a business that can sustain me. And I have toyed with, how much energy and time do I put into that versus other parts of my life and whether it could become a business. But for now, it's something that I'm passionate about. I enjoy. I get to go to markets, meet people, and it's always a thrill when someone gives me money for something I made.
I feel you on this. And I think that creativity is something that so many of us are coming back to. I remember my wedding, my second wedding, nearly 10 years ago now. And you, me, and mum, and our other sister, Ronnie, all got crocheting. And we crocheted about 100 flowers, which I used to then tag onto the name places for when we sat at the meal. And as a family of women, right, creating that and doing that was so special. But I know that you and Ronnie have gone on to actually make money from your craft, whereas I still have a load of crocheted squares that I've not joined together, and it's nearly 10 years later.
Well, I think we all still have many of those flowers hanging around our house. A lovely reminder. Interestingly, I was absolutely useless at making those flowers, and I think I made very few and contributed quite lightly to that effort, but I've got better since.
Oh, I did not know that.
Sorry.
That's why I had to work so hard. But yeah, I mean, recently, and I've shared this quite a few times with others, I've got into pottery in a big way.
Love
and I
that.
think it's just like wanting, yes, to express creativity, but also to get away from the desk job, the heavy stuff in the mind. And I think to some degree, all of that pottery and crochet, for me at least, is about stopping the overthinking, getting back into mindfulness, and just being able to absorb yourself so thoroughly in something that all of the heavy thoughts go away.
Yeah, I think for most creative people, and probably the same for people who are into sports and fitness, escaping to something that you feel really passionate about. For me, it started as a way to keep my hands busy in the evening in front of the TV so I wasn't eating. And then there became this utter joy in seeing something finished and beautiful. I run my hands over the items that I'd made and just think, wow, I'm so clever, this is so beautiful. And I would love to gift them to people because I felt that they were a really special gift. And from there, people said, wow, I'd pay for this. And a little light bulb went off.
Yeah, and that's how a lot of people launch their businesses, creative or otherwise. I mean, exactly the same. I can draw the similarities when I first came out of working for companies and I wanted to be a coach. And I'm realizing that I had a skill that people would pay for. And the thrill of the idea that you can actually make a business by giving other people joy and they see value in something that you can provide and you enjoy doing so, right?
Absolutely. And I think it's when people say those things to you, they make you feel safe in how you feel about yourself, but you're a bit too scared to say. Like coming back to your business, I'm not surprised you've gone into this because you were always my rock and you always gave really sound advice and had really good common sense answers to things. And so I'm just really pleased that other people are benefiting from that now.
Oh, that's so sweet. And you basically lead all my fashion decisions.
You're welcome.
Not the bad ones, obviously.
Yeah, not the bad ones.
Look, I mentioned at the beginning about the chemo and everything. And I asked you at the beginning how you identify stuff. And I think it's really interesting that you haven't jumped into this one immediately because you've been a massive advocate for ovarian cancer awareness. I know that you've been a speaker, you've appeared in magazines.
It's hard because you don't always want to define yourself by cancer or as a survivor because that puts the cancer at the forefront of who you are. And so although I was really vocal and active in the, for want of a better word, cancer scene, when I was ill, going through treatment and soon after, I have definitely distanced myself from it now. And that's not because I'm not happy to talk about it in any way or advocate or support anyone who needs it. But I feel like it's almost like using the cancer card. And when you've gone past something and you're through it, part of me feels it's not just to continue using that to define myself on a number of levels, but always happy to talk about it.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It's like I'm playing the cancer card. Like, I think it's more about knowing you. It's like you've just kind of moved on and you don't want to be stuck in that cycle of thought pattern anymore because, you're storming ahead in your career again. You're like living your life. I know you've got a new beau. There's so much going on for you that maybe getting stuck in the memory and the recycling of all of that old stuff is no longer serving you, would you say?
Yes, I think I'm going to talk for all cancer survivors, like it's always there. It will never go away. You never say, oh, I had that and I'm finished. And that happened to me once. Once you've been there, once you've been on that kind of ledge and tiptoeing at the end and unaware if someone's going to push you off, it is very hard to feel safe and comfortable again. But like you say, I have always, despite we've all got flaws. Despite all of those, I think I've always been really stoic. I know that I'm an incredibly resilient person. So I know that it serves me in no way to lay in that and wallow in that worry and stress. So you're right. Yep, I do. I put it to the side and I think about it as and when, and otherwise I just get on with life.
And look, just for people listening, Sara was diagnosed with stage 3C ovarian cancer. This is, a major cancer diagnosis, and was so shocking at the time that, I remember our family hearing the news from you so far away in New Zealand, and I'm feeling tearful even now. So, sorry, because it's a really big deal to hear that someone you love is being diagnosed with that. Hang on, I'll just get a moment.
You're making me tear up, so stop.
But, we're 5 years down the line now, thank God. And it shifts stuff within your family, but it also shifts stuff personally. And although I'm not going to compare it because it's a different experience, back nearly 20 years ago when I nearly died in childbirth and went through PTSD afterwards and kind of faced what could have been, it gives you that insight about how to value the next few years. And what actually happened was I started questioning a lot more. Is this really what I want? Is this making me happy? What would this look like in 5 years? And although it took me a hell of a long time to get there, where am I? I only launched my business at this point about 3 years ago and moved. I knew that I didn't want to stay working in advertising in the way that I was. I knew that I wanted to do something more heart-centered. I knew I wanted to do something that was more for myself. And it took me a really long time, but I know that juxtaposition, that what happened then put me on the path to start questioning, and went through a hell of a lot in between that point and now, including breaking up with my ex-husband. And at that point my daughter was Kitty was 8 months old, and we share that. You've been through that too.
Yeah, I mean, just coming back to the cancer for a moment, that is one of the reasons, it's really emotional to go back there, and it does set you off. And so I think that when you're aware of that, certainly I avoid that somewhat. But to just go back to what you were talking about, my prognosis was really poor. And so from being a relatively healthy person, I looked after myself. I was told I had 30% chance of surviving 5 years. And that survival rate was based on still getting reoccurring cancer. So when you're a single parent, and far away from your loved ones, your friends and family, that's a really, really scary thing to go through on your own. Sure, I had friends, and some of them I shared more with than others, but you have to take that on. And I think I had to decide, how was I going to do that? It actually wasn't an option for me to roll over and cry about it, because I had 2 kids to take care of and a job to hold down because I needed to pay the bills. So there was a sense of, right, let's get on with this, let's get through it, and let's do this. That doesn't negate the fact that, yes, I wrote letters, yes, I did my will, yes, I contemplated, okay, worst case scenario, what's going to happen to the boys, what's going to happen to this, how are we going to sort these things out? But I did then, and I do now. I put it to the side, I focus on the positive, and I try to get through it. Now, you were just talking about our marriage breakups, which is something that we have in common, probably with a lot of people out there. And I was thinking about something you said just now about how these negative things, make us better people and put us on a better trajectory than we were on. And I do not agree with all things happen for a reason. I hate that phrase because it's just simply not true. Bad things happen to good people all the time, and there is no reason. And I'm not going to sit here and lie and say, oh, having cancer was the greatest thing that ever happened, because it changed my perspective. I would like to think that I would have got to this perspective without cancer, but it is what it is. And that's my go-to phrase. It is what it is. And I've used that ever since my husband left me and my marriage broke up. And I think that was a defining point. And I actually think that served me really well for my cancer diagnosis, because what I learned through that and the utter trauma of it was that actually I can cope with anything and I am resilient.
Yeah, I completely understand what you're saying. Although, I'm just going to challenge you a little bit.
Go for it.
Because that thing, all things happen for a reason. I completely understand what you're saying about good things happening to bad people.
Oh, I think you mean...
sorry, reverse. Bad things happening to good people. I believe back 20 odd years ago, I read the book. It's something similar of that title, when bad things happen to good people, something like that. And I don't believe that, we're cursed, and if you're a bad person, then you're going to get bad things happen to you. But as someone that does believe in energy, I am not adverse to the idea that we can attract certain things towards us. And I know that you went through so many years of stress, and I believe that some things, certainly like cancer, can occur because of things emotionally and energetically eating away at us that we're not aware of in our consciousness. Like, does that ring true at all?
Yeah, I do agree with that. I mean, I'm no doctor, but I do think that perhaps we'll have the possibility to develop cancer and have to go through treatment. And from what I've read, I do believe that it can be triggered by that energy that you talk about, by that stress levels. We know that stress affects the chemicals in our body. It's not just an emotion. So I agree. I think that there were a lot of factors in my life, and unfortunately, that was how it culminated as a cancer diagnosis. So yeah, I think there's definitely some truth in that.
We're chatting a lot about, the hard things. Both of us have definitely been through the ringer over the years. But one thing that we've definitely got in common now, thank goodness, is the fact that so many good things are happening for us. And you mentioned about resilience earlier. And, obviously we're both sisters, right? As opposed to all the other conversations I have within this podcast and anywhere else. You and I grew up in the same house.
We did.
In
the same bedroom.
In the same bedroom. Goodness me. Like, even after I came back from university.
Same bed.
Oh my goodness. So what happened was, while I was away, I moved to Tokyo for a year after I graduated. And Sara took over our bedroom as her own, fair play, but decided that the two single beds were not appropriate. And actually, as I recall, you took our grandmother's double bed, which became available, and decided you'd sleep in this double bed, which then when I returned, as it was the only place that I could stay, we ended up like two old ladies lying in this double bed like Charlie and the Chocolate
Reading
Factory.
our books at bedtime. Yeah, we did. Yeah.
And so it's really interesting to see how, whether our outcomes or our attitudes are similar or very different. Clearly we've attracted some trauma, there's no doubt about that. But do you think, I'm curious, that we have the same outlook on a lot of things? Do we have the same resilience, for example?
I think 100% we have the same resilience. We wouldn't be where we are individually now if we didn't. Yeah, we're similar in so many ways.
And you say a cancer diagnosis didn't do anything for you.
Yeah, well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it did. I did things, I did some of those bucket list things, which I think bucket list is a lame term, but I stopped saying no to experiences when I thought I was going to die, let's be honest. And I thought, if I don't do these things or do these things with my kids and make these memories, like, that's lame. They'll say, oh, mum didn't, jump off into the river, or mum didn't do the stand-up paddle boarding, and I'd rather they had those memories or those pictures. So I did start saying yes. I think that's wavered a little bit now, and I need to be bold and brave a bit more. I think I'm forgetting that. But yeah, look at us now. I mean, we must be similar because we've gone through similar things and we've both come out the other side and doing bigger and better than ever.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think I'm the eldest, right? So Sara, you're
46.
Yes, 18 months younger than me, two school years below me. And I think that as the firstborn, from what I know of other firstborns, the reading I've done, there's a certain amount of that I have, which is
definitely
do the right thing. Can be a little bit too serious. I'm definitely more of an overthinker. Definitely have imbued that kind of responsibility to do certain things, which I'm not going to lie, only at this point, only I put on myself, right? There's no parents or society telling me, but because I grew up as the achiever. And this is interesting because this is one of the biggest differences between you and I that I talk about. And I'm going to be pretty open. I'm doing some therapy at the moment. And interestingly, I was with my therapist just the other day, and she was asking me about like what was the difference between you and your sisters. And
I think we were really different growing up.
Really different. And the biggest thing for me was that I said, well, you know what? I sailed through academia. I loved school. I got so much praise and attention from my achievements. And I remember particularly, what was it? Must have been about 12-ish. It was around the time that our youngest sister was born. And I was acing life. I was having my bat mitzvah at the time, and I got an excellence on the exam. I passed the 11 plus, which if you're not in the UK is a selective entrance exam to go to a school for highly academic all girls school. And then I went off to that school, much to everybody's praise and accolades. I think I passed my violin exam. I mean, it just went on and on and on. And at the same time, you were going in the opposite direction.
Yeah, well, and that's why it's interesting. Our experiences were so different. I mean, I was not academic. Having said that, within my circle and at my local comprehensive, because I didn't pass that exam, I was considered academic for a lot of my school life, but that didn't measure up to your academics. You know, you were always very, very intelligent and articulate, and I did not have that, and I didn't enjoy school. I didn't enjoy the experience of learning, which is a shame. I'd love to go back and learn now because I would have such a different take on it. I was often considered, air quotes, the pretty one, and
yes, I was going to get onto that.
Well, you know, not so much now. In fact, now everyone says how similar we look, which is great. But I think that people thought that I would like that, but I didn't like it. I didn't want to be the pretty one because I felt pretty and dumb, and I didn't give me value. Clever and ugly.
Yeah.
Right. So neither of us won, right?
I mean, I remember going over to Grandma's, beautiful Grandma, such a lovely lady, and she used to we'd walk in, and she said to you, "Oh, you've got such a lovely head shape." And you probably don't remember this. She used to fawn over the shape of your head. And I think Mum must have put me on, I used to lie on the back of my head too much. But, you know, she always,
well,
and I
remember that Grandma would lick her fingers and wipe the grime off my neck and tell me to shower more often. So,
well, different memories.
But, yeah, I mean, I felt pretty, but there isn't that much value in feeling pretty when you're 12. And so, yeah, that was a struggle for me. And so we did grow up differently. You were very, very brave. You went off to university before me and went off to another city. And you may remember I followed you all the way to Leeds because it was too scary for me to go to a new place on my own. I just couldn't fathom it. But you were in Leeds. And so that was a really good option for me. And then you went and travelled. You went to Japan, you did your jet program.
And you came out. I paid for you to come out.
You did. That was a great holiday in Tokyo. And then you travelled around India and did your travelling. And later on, so did I. But I think that being the oldest sibling, you paved the way of a lot of those things. I'm not sure that I would have had the balls to do that on my own. And interestingly, as children, we did not get on at all. Sharing a room and being that close in age, you know, you had nails, I bit my nails, so you pinched me and scratched me constantly. You did. And I pulled hair. And you may recall, you know, we would fight and Mum would take away all our bedding and make us sleep on the floor.
No, she didn't. I don't remember that. You're making that up. No, that didn't happen.
It did happen. But the fact of the matter
is... She didn't make us sleep on the floor. Maybe she made you sleep on the floor. I don't remember that.
You've erased it.
Seriously, I'm going to ask Mum about that.
She won't remember it. I remember it clearly. But the fact is that despite the fact that we didn't get on, we didn't have any of the same friends, you know, we argued non-stop at home, but there were moments where that came through. I mean, do you remember the tune incident?
Yes.
Yeah, I remember being bullied. Bullied is probably a strong word. Some older kids in school, in our primary school, were being mean to me. You must have been the top year of primary school.
So what were you, about 8, 9?
Yeah, I must have been 7 or 8 and you were 10 perhaps. And they were being mean to me and I was crying and my friends had gone to get you. And I don't think we ever mixed in primary school, but you came over and you were sucking on a tune, which is
That's
a
sweet.
a cough sweet. It was already half sucked. It was really thin.
Like a candy for sore throats,
yeah.
right?
And you said, do you want this? And I said, yes. And you gave me your half sucked tune. And I remember sucking on it and feeling better and feeling that my sister was there for me. So I guess we knew even then, despite the fact that we were kids who ripped each other's hair out and wouldn't share clothes, and we knew even then that we were there for each other. So that, that's a good feeling to know looking back.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I find it almost hard to believe how poorly we got on as children.
I don't, because I have 2 boys now who are the same.
I have my twins argue incessantly, and it makes me so sad because I think we missed out on a lot of good years that we could have, been there for each other as children. But like you said, I think sharing a room made that very difficult because we didn't have the independence and the space, and we were in each other's faces arguing over resources, and we didn't grow up with a lot. We were certainly not in poverty, but there was a lot of competition for stuff.
And we didn't have the same interests at all. I sat for hours drawing fashion designs. You read. I mean, hours at night you would have your lamp on and I'd be saying, Joe, turn your lamp off, Joe, turn your lamp off, and you'd say one more chapter. We weren't very similar children, so we didn't really find much in common back then. But yeah, you're right, it's a shame to go back now with our brains, things would be much more harmonious, I'm sure.
Yeah,
maybe.
Yeah, but to some degree that's been a part of making who we are, and we're able to look back with awareness and sort of consider the effects of those things on us. We've both had the opportunities, through not necessarily choice, but having to reflect and go back, and it puts you in such a powerful position then looking forward and going, right, well, do I take responsibility for this? And interestingly, I credit you with a massive turning point in my life, because 5 years ago when I came over to New Zealand and you were going through your last stage of chemo and then, thank God, into recovery, I sat and watched I'm Not Your Guru on Netflix, which is the Tony Robbins documentary, and I'd never heard of him.
Yeah, I couldn't believe you hadn't heard
Never
of him
heard
at the
of
time.
him. And you went, oh, you should watch this. And I was mesmerized. Literally, I remember lying in your son's room. He had to get kicked out so I could have his room while I was staying, and just lay there watching my iPad, watching all the stuff I could find online about Tony Robbins. And although, sure, I do like Tony Robbins, and in fact, only in a few months I'm going to see him here in the UK, doing his Unleash the Power Within, which will be my second time, but I'll get there. It's not that I'm the biggest Tony Robbins fan in the world, although I do like him, I do enjoy him, but there are many others now that I enjoy similarly. But I think that it was one of the first times that it really struck me that coaching and taking responsibility and thinking differently and all the things.
Yeah, I think something else that aligned at that time for you, which I'm really pleased about, was that you were over with me, and so your everyday stresses of life, which you've already said, the overthinking and the stress, the kids, keeping up the home, which is hard work when you've got a family, you had stepped away from all that to prioritize me, which was awesome, but it gave you a little space, and I really saw that you would take yourself off to the beach, because I live in New Zealand, obviously right by the beach, and you would go off to the beach and you would walk along the beach every day, and you were taking in, the energy around you and the beautiful weather and just feeling relaxed. And I think I saw that for the first time in a long time, and I think that combined with Tony Robbins' message and perhaps a little perspective with what I was going through, really saw some great benefits for you.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, that walking thing is a big part of my life now. I live next to the woods. I go out all the time. And, through the burnout in my business at the beginning, I was in the woods. It's just become very much part of me. But you're right. I don't think prior to that visit to you in Browns Bay, I really had much of that going on for me. I've been caught up in the stress of my job for a really long time, many, many years. And like you said, raising twins and the young family. And, I'd been through the surrogacy process and so many things that I think it's really common to not prioritise ourselves, put our kids first,
Absolutely.
the job, all the things. And that was the turning point where I started saying, ooh, how do I start caring for myself?
Just to talk on that for a moment, I really think that women have got it wrong when we put our families first and our husbands or partners first and our children first and our careers first and our homes first. That old, put your parachute on first. Is that the word, parachute? Life jacket. It's a life jacket.
Yes.
It's not a parachute. Don't jump out the plane without your kids. But the whole life jacket thing first, that I would say is something that...
It's the oxygen mask.
And that, yeah, through the can. So I think that's really developed in me. If I'm not looking after myself, I can't look after my kids or my home or my career. And I do put myself first, and I'm not ashamed to say that. I do spend money on myself. I do take time for myself. I do say no to my kids and to people and activities I don't want to do. I use that, it is what it is. And although I'm really reflective, which I love, I can be an overthinker, similar to you. But I think that's where I have really managed to rein it in. And when I overthink, I can actually draw a line in the sand now, which I never used to be able to do, and say, it is what it is, and move on.
I see what you're saying, because overthinking has been with me for a really long time. And the beautiful thing is that a lot of things within my business, I've moved it on a long way. And it's actually made it more obvious to me that I compartmentalized a little. I was like, okay, I'm really doing it over here. And there are things, particularly with the kids, that I'm working on massively now. Like I mentioned, I'm going into therapy, and it's just like, you know what? It's not that I'm wrong. I'm not making myself wrong. And I certainly wouldn't say I'm in crisis or any of those things, but I'm no longer willing to put up with less than in my life in any way. And
why should we?
Yeah, why should we? And also being aware, living my life now as a coach and within the coaching industry, that we can reach out and get support, which is something that I think a lot of women in corporate, or perhaps not in the coaching industry, or being in the self-development world, don't really gift themselves with. They sort of struggle on. And I'm like, no, you know what? I'm going to say yes to support. In fact, I'm working with a nutritionist starting next week. I haven't even told you about that. I'll tell you a bit more about it.
You can pass on all the information to me.
Going through menopause and all of this, it's like lots changing.
Yeah.
Perimenopause, certainly. And both of us have had hysterectomies.
I've had complete menopause.
Yeah, I mean, you went through medically induced menopause because of the treatment for ovarian cancer.
Yeah.
I had a hysterectomy, although I kept my ovaries when I was 29 after childbirth. So, you get to this point and, there's a lot to take in and a big change in life. And, I'm not willing to live the next stage carrying through some of the crap from the stage before, right?
Look, life is short. Why shouldn't we be happy? Life is short. Do what you want to do and do it now. As long as it doesn't hurt anyone or harm anyone, that's my take on it. I want to be happy. And if that means I want to buy myself an expensive bag, I'm going to buy an expensive bag. And if I want to go on a holiday, I'm going to go on a holiday.
Yeah, which is why I'm so pleased that you're here in London and you've done what I know is an extremely expensive trip. You've come or literally across the world to see us and the family. And, I'm not going to lie, while you're here, I am spending like there's no tomorrow. I'm like, woo!
Just money, Joe.
It's just money. And you just go, you need a whole new wardrobe. I'm like, what do I buy? And she's
Look, you can always make more money. Cancer, and I'm sure lots of other things, taught me there is only one precious thing in our entire life, and that's time. Nothing else has any value that comes close. You can be the richest person on this planet. You can be Madonna. You can be Lady Gaga or the Queen. The day you die, all that money's gone. It doesn't mean anything. All you have that is valuable is time. So what you do with that time, how you spend it and who you spend it with, is the only thing that matters.
You know what? I'm going to just wrap it up here because that just says it all, really.
Have we spent enough time doing this?
We've definitely spent enough time. We could talk on and on and on.
We could.
But it's been such a joy being able to just have this conversation with you at this time. And, Sara, I've got to say, you are a massive inspiration.
Don't
And not
make
just
me
to
emotional.
me, because, the way you've come through the stuff with such fortitude. And, Sara you are a massive advocate, speaker, super inspiring, not just to me, but to many. And I know that the New Zealand cancer community really benefited from what you had to share over those few years. And it's no surprise that you're here chatting with me on this podcast, because you have a message, and that message will be heard by the right people and will get out there, because too many people are out there sweating the small stuff, not putting themselves first,
Right.
not having that perspective on life. So,
Right. And despite, having quiet times with my cancer advocacy, probably every few months I will get a message from someone in Ireland, in America, in Canada, in Australia, who comes across my Instagram page and messages me for advice, or just wants to tell me, oh my God, I've just been diagnosed. What am I going to do? Or my mum's just been diagnosed. And that's actually, that's really humbling, because who wouldn't help someone or support someone who's going through a hard time? So the fact they find my page and I can, just send them a message of support or stay up to date with them as they get their information about their treatment or their diagnosis. It's amazing how far we can reach, even without making too much effort.
and if somebody does want to find you online, where are the best places?
Oh, Instagram. I'm Philosophical Ramblings of a Cancer Gal. You'll find me if you put that in. I think it's PH_ramblings cancer gal, but just Google it. You can also find me on Facebook under the same name. And my business is Beanie Bros.
Yeah, we didn't even touch on that, right?
We didn't talk about that.
Sara makes the most amazing crocheted headbands. And how do you describe the ones that you twist? What are they called?
I call those wired head wraps. These are called Beanie Bros with a twist. With a twist, get it? Because you twist them. And the crochet that you're talking about is actually an ear warmer, and it's called a Beanie Bros Beanie Band. Because I like these, coming up with these little names. And I do a few other bits and pieces, some baby items, and I have done some cancer headwear. But just check it out. And if you're anywhere near New Zealand, come along to a market.
And interestingly, I often show up in my online places wearing these headwear.
I do.
Whenever I have a bad hair day, giving away the behind the scenes, if I have a bad hair day, I wear one of these wraps. And I'm so happy.
Covering the roots.
Yeah, the roots, boy. And Sara's brought me a few new ones, so you'll probably spot me in a live anytime soon wearing one of these. Finally, to say thank you so much, Sara. If anyone's interested in connecting, I will put Sara's socials in the show notes.
Anytime. Thanks, Joe.
And my thanks again to Sara for that interview. And what we didn't share was that while she was here in London staying with me, she told me some of her fears about her health and some changes she'd noticed. She'd been asked to return to her oncologist when she came back from the UK to get her bloods checked and just see how things were going. Now, she was 5 years NED, no evidence of disease after her ovarian cancer treatment. And what she discovered was that the ovarian cancer was back. Now, I'm recording this a few months after that episode. And truthfully, I hadn't shared this interview before now because I don't think I could have recorded this without getting too emotional for the words to come out. And fortunately, I'm at a place now where I'm able to share in more detail how Sara's doing. She immediately went back into chemotherapy and had several months more chemotherapy, not being given a particularly good prognosis, as you can imagine, with a second bout of ovarian cancer. However, we are now at the end of 2023 and she has not only been through all of that chemotherapy again, but she's actually back teaching at her school. The chemotherapy did work. And thank God at this current stage, she's able to get back to her normal life. And we pray. And may I ask, if you are spiritual or faith-led, that you join me in wishing for her that long may that be the case. Obviously, it's not something that she can forget. And as her sister, I can't forget that either. And you live under a cloud when you've been through something like that. but her resilience has been absolutely phenomenal. And my mum is out in New Zealand with her as I speak, and they've just done a craft fair selling her amazing Beanie Bros headbands, and life carries on. And on that note, I would like to wish you a very happy holidays, and to recognise that for many of us, we enter the holidays in some form of struggle, whether that be business related, family, health, finances, and so on. And I want to wish you into 2024 all the best of everything, and to allow ourselves to remain less attached to the outcome whilst wishing for the best for ourselves, our families, our friends, our communities, and the collective in general. I hope to see you back here in 2024 when we relaunch in January with season 6. And if you're in the spirit of giving over the holiday season, my request from Santa this year is to have more people review Goals with Soul on Apple Podcasts and share their experience if you have enjoyed listening to the show. So hop on to your Apple Podcast app, please leave us a 5-star review, share with others what value you get out of listening to Goals with Soul. And massive thanks for all your support this year. I'm so happy you've been tuning in and enjoying the show. I wish you a very inspired action, holidays, New Year and beyond. With all my love, take care. Bye now.